Motion to convene. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. I would just like to announce that Legislator Jeanette will be attending remotely from 1350 County Route 53, Fraser's Falls. Can I get an approval of the minutes? By Mr. Forsythe, seconded by Mr. Sheridan. Is there any discussion about the May minutes? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. So first up, we have the Sheriff's Office. Sheriff. Thank you for all that you do, sir. It is, oh, it's just a 6-month assessment of the mandated medication treatment program in the county correctional facility that includes curriculum and stuff. I apologize, I was searching for a resolution that was not available.
I'll get started. There's a PowerPoint that can be set up. Work on it. So I was telling you 2 or 3 months ago about the MAP program, and you had a lot of questions. I took down those questions and sent me back for a 6-month review. That's what I'm here today for. So this went into effect October 7th of last year in accordance with the New York State Commission corrections, minimum standard 711. In general, each county was tasked to do this. The problem is they really didn't come out with any specifics as far as an outline of how to do this. So every county kind of had to put their own policies and procedures together, submit them to the State Correctional Commission, and then they would do, go forward and approve those policies and procedures. So we submitted those. Every county has some different needs. So our county had to come up with their own, in which we did, and enact the policy. And I think I sent this board that policy a month ago, roughly. So you have that policy. Next slide. So you'll get a copy of this PowerPoint. So if you can't read it because it was small print, then you definitely get it in the next couple of days. So there's 5 parts to the MAP program. One is drug management. That's the one I've spoken to you about with the prescription drugs. The second part is counseling and clinical support. The third is peer support to our CASEX to perform that. 4th is the discharge planning. And 5 is reentry into the reentry and transitional support back in society. All 5 of those are part of MAP. And when you talk to them, most people in the public, they think MAP is just the drug part of it. You dispense the drugs to inmates. It's actually 4 more parts, and I just explained the other 4. So it's just not one small requirement of giving them drugs. It's counseling, peer support, discharge, and then reentries. And there's 5 different parts. Next, these, I'm not going to go through these drugs slide by slide, but I'll kind of hit on the major points because we'll be here all day, and I know nobody wants to sit here and listen to it. And I'm not a clinician or anybody that knows a lot about drugs, but that next going. So Suboxone, I'm going to tell you after how many inmates get certain drugs. So if you're saying to yourself, well, what inmates are getting what drugs, that's coming down the line in a couple more slides. So Suboxone comes in a tablet form. It reduces that craving for the opiates, creates a high and then a low. So you get an inmate that's in a high, actually, and then they go into low. So there's a lot of monitoring that has to be done. If you just continue some medication, it can lead to sudden, sometimes severe withdrawal and depression symptoms. And that's kind of what part of this program is all about. There is a great possibility of diversion. When I say diversion, it means cheeking it, giving it to another inmate, passing it to another inmate. So if you hear me say the word diversion, it's a fancy word for passing drugs to another inmate. Next, Dylan. Subutex also comes in tablet form. It's daily past the med pass, and it works kind of the same as Suboxone, but it's depends on the circumstances and their symptoms, what the doctor prescribed. Some drugs are better for certain symptoms, so I'm not going to get too much deep into that because we'd be here all day. I do know that some people here went on the jail tour maybe 3 weeks ago, whenever it was. I think for some of you it was probably eye-opening. The new people, especially how things transpire in that jail and our population, how congested it is at certain points in the jail. But we're doing everything we can to make sure this medication gets passed in the safest manner. The next ill would be Sublocade. It's administered once a month. It's not diverted because it's shot form, it's injected. You can't force an inmate to take an injection. That's why some will take this and some won't. They don't want to get a shot. Some do, some don't. But it's nice for us in a couple ways because it's less traffic for the inmates in the facility. Obviously, we want a safe environment, not only for the inmates, but the staff. So the less movement, less chance of any problems from the inmates. So it's a safety factor. If you remember, I was here a couple months ago, and this is where we signed the contract. Mr. Poytz will remember this because we signed a contract with Denver to get Sublocade for 19% less. I figured that out. It's $6,000 a month we're saving. So over a year, we're going to save $72,000 from our administrative looking into better costs. We're always looking into that.
Sure. Yes, thank you. Sure. What percentage of the inmates use that?
Sublocade, it's
One
coming
time.
on the slide.
Oh, it's coming up. Okay.
Yep, you'll see. Yeah, so you probably got a lot of questions, maybe get everything done, and maybe,
To the end and.
because I might answer some of the questions on some of the slides. So if you got something scribbled down, just remember it all. Is there any questions? Well, you'll see the percentages and what inmates are getting prescribed to. Methadone, administered once a day at MAC call. It's in a liquid form, again, hard to divert. It's provided through our community services. Our Dr. Pat, that's doing the MAP program, is not certified in methadone. It's the only drug he isn't. So we have to go through our community services. Presently, today, we have no inmates on methadone. I think in total, since 6 months, we've had like 3 total on methadone. So it's not a highly prescribed drug from our Dr. Pat, and there's enough other ones that we try not to get going to methadone because it does require transportation from community services to the jail. Our deputies are going to be tied up doing that. And it's one of those things that we just don't want to get into if we don't have to. Vivitrol is our next one. This Vivitrol actually has been in the facility before I was sheriff and Kevin Wells was sheriff. We had a Vivitrol program. It's administered once a month, not at the MAT pass. It's through our other programs. It's more for alcohol abuse. But again, we've had it there for several years. Not many inmates really want Vivitrol. And I asked my administration why, and their blunt thing was they don't get a high from it. They don't get a high from Vivitrol. There's no high. So whether that's a good reason not to get it or not, I'll leave it up to you. But they were blunt about it, saying this is why not many people have ever gotten Vivitrol. Naltrax, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, but thank you, she got it. It's administered daily at Medcard. It lasts 24 hours. You'll see in the slide that our doctor hasn't prescribed this yet. All these drugs are FDA approved, and it's kind of things that we can prescribe, but our doctor has not prescribed this yet. Cantrell, what's that?
Nobody would want it.
Nobody want? Okay.
If you take it, you never get them.
Again, yeah, another one of those can't get high factors. Camprel, again, it's in our med cart. It's a daily dosage tablet. Alcohol dependency therapy is kind of one of these big ones. It goes along with our counseling. Again, nobody's really been prescribed this drug. The next slide probably might answer some of your questions. So here's our 6-month review. This is a snapshot that we took on April 14th of what drugs were prescribed to each inmate. You can see Suboxone was 5 inmates, Subutex 27, Sublocade 27, and you can pronounce that for me, that was 2. Naltrexone, thank you. Potato. So, you can see the breakdown percentage wise, looks like the two drugs right there are pretty much the ones that are prescribed most. What I really want to stress here is that MAT is a voluntary, strictly voluntary program. And you cannot force inmates to go on the MAT program. If the inmates choose not to go to counseling, you can't take away their prescribed drugs. Some people think it's okay, you don't go to counseling, you don't get your prescription drugs. You cannot do that. It's not part of the mandate, okay? So if they say, I don't want counseling, but I want prescribed drugs, they get the prescribed drugs. Again, whether you agree with it or not, that's your philosophy, but that's the mandate, and that's the way it's written. Right, wrong, or different. So there here we had 61 total, and that date, approximately 50% of the jail population was on the MAP program. I can tell you today we have 115, 64 are on the MAP program. That means 55% of the inmates today's date are on the MAP program. So over half. I can tell you if you're asking a big question for me, how do we rank in the state? We're number 2 in the state for people that are on prescription drugs. There's one to beat us in the state. Again, it's for another debate. Again, Dr. Path is doing a great job, prescribes the drugs that best suits that individual's past history, their health concerns, and their present symptoms. So he's got a litmus test that when he evaluates these inmates, he evaluates them and then determines what drug would fit them best. Again, they don't want the shot, they're going to Subutex. If they do want the shot, they'll go to Sublocade. So there's, you know, some flexibility there. Skip over that one, Dylan. Oh, excuse me, go back to that one, mistake. So part of the program for MAT is the Narcan program. We have to educate and distribute Narcan to inmates that are exiting facility for whatever reason. They're saying it reduces mortality. I believe that. I see it every day from our deputies and EMS personnel using Narcan. But that's part of the MAT program, is that they're educated and supplied with Narcan when they exit the facility. Costs. This is probably your biggest slide here. Okay, so we broke it down into staff. Our physician, who is just our MAT physician. This isn't our regular medical doctor physician. This is just our MAT physician. For a 6-month period, the cost was $74,360. Okay, now that incorporates so much a month he gets, and then each time he sees an inmate, he gets a stipend. And that equals up to $74,360. Nurse practitioner, we have a nurse practitioner comes in and assists with the MAT program. It's a big program. She gives us 10 hours a month. You can see the $3,000 the cost. We have our dedicated registered nurse half pay that goes to the MAT program, $31,000. We have a MAT coordinator that is a corporal CO position in our jail, and that's a lot of work. Trust me, she does a great job with it, but she's working hours and hours on coordinating the MAT program. And then our clinic manager, who part of this would probably go towards the MAT, isn't even figured in this salary, but she does do some work with the MAT program. So if we take that along with the next slide, Dylan. These are the prescription totals for the MAT program since October. And if you're looking at October and November, you're saying, wow, 5,000, 5,000, all of a sudden 14,000, and all of a sudden 45,000. Because when you start the program, to evaluate all the inmates in there, 100 plus inmates, it takes a lot of time. So the doctor 1 week would do 10, next week would do 20, you get to 20, 30. It took some time to have all the inmates evaluated. Okay, so that's why you're seeing the numbers so low the first few months. But gradually, as you cut up to the population, you can see the figures in January, February, March, and April were 45, 45, 57, and 40. And the 57, I can tell you why there's a bump there, is because we had a high population of inmates. We were up to 100, almost 30 inmates. So the more population you have, the more prescription drugs you're going to have. And then we kind of waned back down in April. I could tell you my March figure was, she just got it this morning, or excuse me, May was 41,100. So we're right around 40, 45,000. I think March was an anomaly, but who knows? We could be in the summer back up to 130, 140 again. I can't predict with my crystal ball what my inmate population is going to be, but it correlates with cost with inmate population. So next slide. with our labs, and I don't know why she put this in, our labs are very few, it's like $180. You send certain blood work out for certain labs, and that wasn't a whole lot. So the approximate calculation, you can see the total for 6 months is $370,000. Now, I would dare say that because October and November were light months with 5,000, you're probably gonna, I estimate after a year, you're about $800,000. That's all prescriptions, all your staff, to facilitate this mandate. And I maybe would reach out to you to see how much money we're getting back from the state, but it's not anywhere near 800,000. So, and we had, maybe they started us out with 100 and some thousand they gave us to get going, but since then I haven't seen it. And so, next slide, Dylan. One of your questions when I came last time, were we getting repeat offenders coming back? Again, kind of hard to track this. We did the best we could. Again, 61 were currently active, discharged out of the program. This was 6 months ago with 89 people. Out of that 89, 4 had returned to facility. 2 were returned for sentencing and 2 were on new charges. Okay, so kind of hard to establish if it's a working product right now. Out of those people that did exit the facility, 25 went on to see a physician. 6 were released directly to rehab. Sometimes courts will order rehab. That's how they get released. They have to go to rehab until they get released. 6 of those were released to rehab. 1 was went self-admitted to rehab. 16 went to DOCS. DOCS means they went to state facility, so they were sentenced to state prison. So out of the 61, 16 went to state prison. 1 was self-discharged. That means they got themselves right out of the program. They started in that program. Only 1, and only 1 so far of all 6 months said they want to get out of MAT. Come to your own conclusions on that one, but only 1 said, I don't want to do the MAT anymore. 32 discharges, they had followed up with a physician or went to rehab. So there is some correlation to getting more help. I wouldn't say that would be big numbers, but there are some people that are going from this program into getting some rehab or doctors, physicians, some other reasons. So it's just for another debate. Next one, Dylan, please. I'm not going to read this whole one because we'll be here all day, but I did count these up. So 6 months prior to, because this is one of your questions, Matt, we did a 6-month test and we had 42 fights or assaults and 46 contraband issues in the jail. If you go to the next one, Dylan, the next 6 months from October when Matt started until April, fights went down to 28 and contraband went down to 18. So that was a significant decrease. If you go to the next slide, Dylan, I'm really going to show you. I did the figures. So the decrease in fights and assaults since the MAT program came out was 36%, 1/3. And contraband has gone down 64%, 2/3. That's significant. Contraband going down 2/3 since the MAT program. I know that was some of your questions. Is contraband more or less? Fights more or less? You know, and these drugs level these people out. They get high, and then they have their lows. Like, thankfully, the lows aren't that bad where they're fighting. I mean, these are the numbers, and they're the numbers. I'll be curious in another 6 months to see what we are. You know, we will definitely track this for sure to see if this is going to keep going this way or we're going to have changes. So these are some of the questions you asked, and these are some of the figures that we came up. So it has made a difference. Next one, Bill. Grievances and inmates grieve for different things for different reasons. They were steady between 2022 and 23, and then you see the next 6 months they kind of went down. So they went down. Go to the next one, Dylan. They went down 47% of grievances from our inmates. And there's a litany of, I could be here all day telling you what they can grieve. And they grieve everything, trust me. And we review grievances. Some grievances go all the way to all of them. And then they determine if this is good grievance or bad grievance. But that's almost half your grievances have gone down since the MAT. Next, Dylan. Just quickly, I want to talk about classification, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but the 2 classifications on some of the pods. When you guys went on your tour, you saw the main dormitory area And then off to the side would be a separate, little smaller area. That's the closed custody people. If they misbehave or certain classifications, they go into that area. They don't get a chance to go to educational programs. Some things are taken away. I could tell you probably the most thing on the slide you want to know is a total 11 individuals on the MAP program. Only one from general custody has gone to closed custody. So 11 people that were in closed custody came out into the general population because of the MAP program. Make your own, only one went the other way. So that's the difference too, because usually most people go from general to closed. We had people going from closed to general. So whether that's because of the MAP program, well, 11 more people went to general instead of going the other way. So some differences have definitely occurred since we enacted the MAP program. Next, Dylan. So we have, and this was another question you asked, we do have many programs in our facility. And we've got them listed here. There's a program for relapse prevention, anger management, communication, basic needs, personal development, community feelings group. Believe it or not, there's one in there. You can see the correlation of people that are in it and then people that are on the MAP program that are in. Pretty good percentage, right? We figure a little over 50% are in these programs that are on the MAP program. We recently had a review from the New York State Commission that came in for twofold. One is they had a review of our medical review, which they do yearly. And this, for the first time, they had a MAP review. So New York State Commission comes in, they review all your medical policies, procedures, all your doctors and medical personnel. And the second one was the MAP. So I can tell you about the MAP because we had an exit interview with the commission, said it was well organized, MAP program, good policies, procedures. They had a few logistic things that we need to shore up in some policies, but it wasn't, really anything that was earth-shattering. But overall, it was very good. As a matter of fact, Ellen from Commission said, you're kind of a model for the rest of the state to follow when it comes to the MAP program. That comes from a lot of work from a lot of people, not me. I'm the overseer. You got jail administrators that are in there that have done the MAP program. You got all the doctors. You've got all the nurses, the COs. You got a clinical mental health counselor in there, a clinic manager that we hired. She specifically talked about how she did doing an excellent job. And she really is getting a hold of policies, procedures, and trying to enact those. It took a team to make this successful, and we're still working some of the bugs out. It's only 6 months old, so there's always something that comes up that we have to address that we have never seen before. But I'm pretty proud of that organization over there that's come across with this MAP program. Again, agree with it or not, you can have all the philosophy you want. It's a mandate. It has to happen. If it has to happen, you might as well do it the right way to the best of your ability. And when the commission says you're a kind of model for the rest of the counties to follow, to me, that's pretty darn good. Pretty darn good. So with that, I'm sure you have questions.
Mr. Reagan will start.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are we able to use any of the opioid money that we got from the pharmaceutical settlements to offset any of these costs?
We can, and in this year's budget, we've included $146,000 to offset the cost. We utilized revenue from community services in the total of approximately $175,000. So in the end, the only amount that went on the levy was $100,000 of a $421,000 budget. If you recall, we set aside funds in contingency. We've now moved those over with the cost of medication. But yes, we have, and we'll look to the challenges. There are restrictions on those funds, and where we can increase that as we see what this is turning into. We'll be looking at that in budget.
Thank you.
Mr. Fang.
Just a little further on, I was asked this week on community service. A person approached me and wanting to work for me under community service. How does that come about? The judge gives somebody community service.
You kind of lost me.
Okay, the guy walks up to me and he said, I've been assigned by a judge 25 hours of community service. By Wednesday, I have to complete 5.
Okay.
And I work for you for 5 hours. But I'm a businessman.
Yeah, I would say the judge is gonna have certain requirements of where he can do his community service. Yeah, that's something.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, probation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is not directly related to the math program, but it is in a way. And I'm curious if the volunteers from any 12-step recovery programs come into the jail and have meetings.
Yes, there's AAs, yeah, we have A's, that's part of our program. I only mentioned a few programs. We
Yeah.
have a litany of programs. That was more correlated to the math program, the ones I showed you. But yes, we have many, many programs in there, and that's one of them.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Anybody else? Webster.
I'm one of the ones that went through there, and I can tell you, I don't know how they do their job. It's a pretty tough spot, man. I know I would not take that job, I don't care what. it is. So that said, well, out of curiosity, the one person that decided not to take the math program, did you ever talk to them and find out why?
I didn't know. I can find that out though.
I was just curious, the figures you had for, say, employees, doctors, or whatever, the 225,000, and the med for 250,000. You said it was 370, but it actually comes to 440,000. I'm trying to figure out that difference.
To check the numbers. I don't know if she deleted something or that might be the clinic manager included. Which kind of is or kind of isn't. Yeah, I think you're missing the clinic manager part because we talked about that today at our jail mission. She's only partly MAP program, so I don't know if we should count her. I think that's what she added in the clinic manager part, the whole salary. And I said, she only works in.
Now you're mandated to give them these drugs.
Right.
Are you mandated what drug to give them?
It's determined by the physician. So they can't pick, they can't come in and go, I want this one, I want this. The physician.
How about you? I mean, if it's safer to give them a shot once a month that saves $72,000 a year,
Right.
why wouldn't we be doing that instead of walking down?
Part of the mandate is you cannot force someone to take an injection. That is part of the mandate. You can't make someone take an injection
In New York.
or any
State,
medication.
medication over objection.
Right. So I can't force them to take an injection. That's why there's, the other one's very similar. It's just one's an injection, one isn't. So the ones that don't want to get an injection, they'll choose the other one.
You have mental health, legal hygiene services.
Thank you. You're doing a great job with a bad situation.
I appreciate that.
Anyone else? Mr. Burke.
Is it you probably mentioned this, but is it a safer place for our correction officers as well?
Other than the one assault we had with our officer a couple months ago, which was heinous, describe it that way. The staff on inmate has probably gone down.
Great report, thank you.
Mr. Jeanette, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Sheriff. I just had one question. It's kind of piggybacking off of Mr. Webster's. Was the so that list of medications, right? I get that it's mandated, but do you have to offer? Is it an all or none? Like you can pick from all of these, or can we be like this is all we offer here? Because like right, the Vivitrol to me, right, obviously is like Chantix. It's going to block some receptors, so it seems like shouldn't we be trying to get them off of this, right? But so that's why my kind of question is it more that we have to give them this list or say, or we can kind of be like limit to, all right, we're going to be giving more of this than that, or is that still just whatever the doctor feels is necessary? Because I think,
Correct.
okay.
The latter, not the former. Whatever the doctor gonna do the criminal history or the symptoms or, male or female, if he makes the determination on what drug would be prescribed. They don't come in and say, this is the one I want. No, that's not how it happens. Thankfully, the doctor has that.
Some pool.
Right, he has some control of what drugs will be prescribed, and he should. He's the doctor, he knows the symptoms, he's trained for it. He knows all these things as far as, the MAP program goes. He's been doing an excellent job, great choice for us. The staff, the doctors, everybody else, he gets along so well. He was just the right man for the job.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like with the controlled substance, it's the the prescribers are always kind of behind from what the inmates and stuff know what the outcomes can be with using them, right? So,
Right.
but thank you.
You're welcome.
Next up, Mr. Perkins.
Thank you. Just a comment. It's funny that you can't force the inmates to have a shot, but during COVID, everybody was forced to have a shot.
I'll leave that one alone.
Mrs. Hager.
Oh, I can't leave that. I think state inmates were forced to have a shot. I could be wrong, but
They were
the Department of Corrections didn't force anybody. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Mr. Sheridan?
Recently, I read an interesting article where there's legislation which was passed through the state legislature this year that would make it illegal or unconstitutional to have inmates work at a facility. I assume that must mean of the porter work, like mopping the floors and feeding the mess hall.
Yes,
How does this relate to the county jail?
it's all voluntary. You can't force inmates to work. You have to, it's a voluntary thing. And we do have volunteers that do laundry, work in the kitchen, work outside. We do have some volunteers that do the cleaning of pods or hallways. It's all voluntary. You cannot force an inmate to work. Again, true or not, that's.
Does anybody else have a first question? Mrs. Hager?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not every inmate in there is convicted, but some of them are waiting for trial.
Correct.
right?
You
So-
get help, yes.
Okay, so they're not
Pending.
convicted where they would be serving a sentence.
I would say our sentence inmate correlation is 50% to unsentenced in there.
50?
50.
Thank you.
Last I knew, I haven't checked in several months, but that was the correlation maybe 5 months ago. 50-50 split.
Interesting. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions? Seeing none, I have one. So in general practice, Subutex is given to people who are pregnant or have an anaphylactic reaction to naloxone. It would be interesting, obviously, you probably don't have that here, but it would be interesting just to hear back what the policy is on Subutex, because we have so many people that have it.
When it's dealing with pregnancy,
Well, no. In the general medical population, you only get Subutex if you're pregnant or have an anaphylactic reaction to the naloxone. So it would be interesting to see the policy in the jail is. That's all. Anybody else? Thank you, Sheriff, very much.
thank you.
And next up is Matt Denner in Emergency Services. I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Blade Stack Inc. for fire investigation, case management software, and modify the 2023 budget for the Office of Emergency Services, moved by Forsythe, seconded by Mr. Fall.
Good evening. This resolution here for you is to enter a contract with Vistack. Vistack is one of the vendors we reached out to for software for our fire investigation team. They did come back with a better price compared to the other ones. Well, what this does is right now we have 8 fire investigators. Every one of them have their own report. We found in the last couple of years, when these reports have to go to an insurance company or to the district attorney's office for prosecution, we kind of wanted to make sure all the standards and everything's uniform. So this is the exact same platform that New York State Fire is going through with their state fire investigators. So what this is, the cost, like I said, was $2,900. It's for 10 investigators for a year. Currently, we have 8 investigators. By the end of the year, we'll have 2 more added on the rolls for 10. This gives us up to 50 reports for the year. Last year, we had 32 reports at the end of last year. Already, we're at 33 this year. So,
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Next up, I have a resolution. authorizing the chair to sign an intermunicipal agreement with the Cranberry Lake Fire District, the town of Fine, and the village of Potsdam for sites to construct interoperability towers in each location. Moved by Mr. Forsythe, seconded by Mr. Reagan.
As you all know that we're moving forward with our radio project, and part of it is adding a few more towers, two of which are down in the Adirondack Park. One would be in the village of Potsdam. We do have, I believe, two. We have the contract back from the town of Fine and from the Cranberry Lake Fire District. We should have one back from the village of Potsdam shortly. So this will authorize the chair to sign on our side of the contracts.
Any questions from Mr. Denner? Mr. Forsythe?
Thank you, Madam Chair. What's that put us to? How many do we got left there? What we done?
This will give us our basic number. After that, we're looking at adding 3 more. This will put us at 13. 13 sites, and I believe we'll own 12 out of 13. We have one site that we're looking at putting equipment on that belongs to the New York State.
Mr. Denisha?
Just a quick question on the site in Cranberry Lake. Evidence that the part of the parking lot was going to be required.
With the sites that we have in the past are all 100 foot, by 100 foot. So in the beginning, we sent a surveyor down to put pins in. It did come into the parking lot 25 feet in one corner. We had adjusted it to 75 by 100 feet. So now it does not come into the blacktop, it comes right along the edge.
Good. Anyone else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Denner. Next up is Mr. LePage from Relations. I have a resolution proclaiming July 16th through the 22nd, 2023 as probation, parole, and community supervision. Moved by Mr. Reagan, seconded by Mr. Forsythe. Okay.
So as she said, this is to recognize the hard work and dedication of those individuals and agencies that do community-based supervision. Usually during this week, we do a community service project and usually do a department-wide picnic. This year, however, I have like 8 of my staff at defensive tactics training, so I'm not sure really if I'm going to have people to do either one of those two things. So we're still trying to work something out. Last year, you guys graciously donated lunch for the staff. We did subway boxes with your recognition money. So we may do something like that again, depending on, like I said, what we can work out. Defensive tactics training. This is the biggest one we've ever done. It's a full 40 hours, so I couldn't pass it up when offered. We're doing this in conjunction with Franklin County. They had a probation officer assaulted the last 2 months. So they set this training up and they've invited us along with that. So it doesn't cost anything for us to do this. Free for our county, so I couldn't say no. Just a bad week.
Any questions, Mr. LePage? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mr. Pfotenhauer. I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign contracts. Public county transit buses with Concio Technologies for surveillance and automatic vehicle location system with the Khajiit for mobile Wi-Fi system. Moved by Mr. Forsythe, seconded by Mr. Perkins. I do need to make, should I make that first? I do need to make a friendly amendment. I need a motion from someone to change the total cost from $214,000 to $219,000 by Mr. Hall, and Mr. Fay, and Mr. Hagan. All in favor of that change? Any opposed? Carrie? Okay, now let's speak to the amended. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a little background on this. So in addition to the bus purchases that we do on a regular basis to keep the fleet up to date. There also is a requirement to outfit the buses with certain technologies. So we have been working with DOT and with several vendors through a competitive review process to get the best value for the technologies that we need to outfit the buses. And I'll just describe a little bit about what we're going to be putting on the buses. The automated or automatic vehicle location systems, or AVL systems, that allows with trip planning. It will allow for the creation of apps, phone apps, and also desktops to actually plot where the buses are at any certain time on a live basis. So it'll be useful for customers riding the bus to be able to see when a bus is arriving, when if it's delayed, if there are weather delays for some of the bus routes, and that can be pushed out through this automatic vehicle location system. The surveillance systems are cameras. You need them in the buses for safety and security of both the patrons, the riders, as well as the drivers. There have been, unfortunately, some incidents over the years with both drivers and passengers. So that will be an added safety feature. And then the mobile Wi-Fi system allows for just a better rider experience, and also helps with marketing the bus if customers are able to access Wi-Fi from the change that was mentioned by the chair. Originally, our funding, we worked out the funding costs at 214, and it's just a little bit over that. We went back and worked the numbers just to make sure they were spot on, and it came over just a touch over 214. So we wanted to go to that 219 number just to allow for a little bit of buffer in that system. The total cost is about 216 that we have right now, but there is potential for a little bit of increase depending on the timing of the purchases. There's no county cost for these entities or for this technology. It's all covered through the state funded programs through Department of Transportation.
Any questions? Seeing none. Oh. Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign contracts with designated trail maintenance entities associated with the New York State Mobile Trail Grant Program, moved by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Mr. Sheridan.
Thank you. An annual resolution that you've seen before. It allows for funding to flow to the snowmobile trail maintenance entities, of which the county has two and contracts with those two entities on an annual basis to allow for funding to be allocated to the snowmobile program.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. And lastly, we have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign the 2023-2024 local sponsor signature form as part of the grant application to the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. Moved by Mr. Perkins, seconded by Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you. This again, it's part of the snowmobile grant program. It's a form that is required for signature, and it authorizes the signature of that form to submit the application.
Any questions from anybody? Seeing none. Oh, wait, Mr. Denisha has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Another question, just a comment. I want to thank the planning department for bringing this up. It's handled by Soil and Water. And Reagan's departure created a huge void in planning department. Thank
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have the Board of Elections, Jenny Bacon. I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign contracts, requesting grant extensions for the Technology Innovation and Election Resource Tier Grant Program and modifying the 2023 budget for the Board of Elections, moved by Mr. Hall, seconded by Mr. Forsythe.
This is our technology grant. We have the bill pending after this is passed. We bought the election night or absentee and audit machine. We have not paid for it yet out of this
Can
grant.
you turn on your microphone? I'm sorry.
So we have spent some of that, and then we were awarded an additional 83.5 for this year.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up, I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign contracts requesting grant extensions for absentee ballot prepaid postage grant for Board of Elections for the acceptance of the 2023 absentee ballot prepaid postage grant. Moved by Mr. Perkins and then Mr. Sheridan. Thank you.
This is also hopefully going to continue as an annual grant. We were given an additional 28,000 this year. And it's exactly what it says. We have to prepay the postage on all absentee ballots going out and coming back to us, and also absentee applications now. So this just pays for that postage.
Basically, commissioners around New York State all advocated that you're gonna dump this on us and make us pay for the chicken both ways. How about coughing up some money, they'll pay for some of this. So luckily, in a year like this helps. Who knows how much it'll be and what percentage it will cover in like a presidential year, but hopefully it'll cover it all.
Any questions about this? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And lastly, I have a resolution authorizing the chair to sign contracts requesting grant extensions for poll workers, training, voter education. Poll worker training / voter education by Mr. Forsythe, and Mr. Hall, and Mr. Reagan.
This is for poll worker training and voter education. And this grant, we are going to utilize the money this year. We had to make all of our 250 of our election inspectors, county employees, requiring a 4-hour orientation. So we're going to pay for that 4-hour orientation for our 250 inspectors and King County employees that of this grant.
Any questions about that? Mr. Forsythe?
Madam Chair, when do we do the training? When's the training?
The orientation is online, so they're doing it now. And then their training is going to be after the primary, after the June primary, their annual training that they have to take from us.
Okay.
Any
Yeah,
else?
Democrats in Lisbon, friend of my life.
Actually, I'll give you it's been a large issue because they do requirements.
Yeah.
And then no one expected it already said we're done. And another bunch that are saying, we have decided yet, but we're leaning towards leaving, but we haven't made a decision yet. It's going to impact all of us. So we came to a meeting here a month or two ago and asked for some help. Recruiting to inspectors, we need to step it up and ask for some more because we're losing quite a few folks. They're arguing and rightly so. Going through 10 days responsibility of trying to qualify to be a county employee, we work for a day or 2 a year. And they're saying that's insane. But I don't think anybody here would necessarily disagree with that. A great extent. It starts with federal government, straight out us, with all these changes that we made. So now we're literally spending half of the day getting information to inspectors that we train, become county employees, or orientation, and then they work for a day or two, if they get called off here.
Any additional questions for this one? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay. I have another resolution authorizing the chair to sign grant amendments for early voting expansion grant contract extension. Moved by Forsythe, seconded by Reagan.
This is our early voting funding, and we plan to utilize the rest of this money to buy carts to carry all of this stuff to early voting, because we just walk in now with a printer in our arms, and they'll help organize and keep everything together and get delivered to the early voting sites in Augsburg and Preston.
Anyone have any questions about that? Seeing none, oh wait, Mr. Reagan does.
When's early voting start?
Saturday,
This coming Saturday.
Yes.
And it runs,
until Sunday, meaning the 25th at 5 o'clock. And then we'll have to go through and program all the iPads, all the additional information is to be voted. They'll be loaded up the trucks first thing Monday morning. You should talk, once it gets to the county.
thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
Right.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you both. I don't know how to keep it all straight, and they change it every day. Up next is human resources, strategy director. I have a resolution authorizing the hourly rate change for examination monitors and to proctor civil service exams for 2023 and 2024. Moved by Mr. Smithers, seconded by Mr. Perkins. Go right ahead.
So to comply with New York State Constitution, the Human Resources Department employs exam monitors and chief exam monitors to proctor civil service exams. These titles are categorized as flat rate, non-union per diem positions. The annual wage rate increase for exam monitors mirrors CSEA negotiated annual wage. The 2023 hourly rate for exam monitors is $13.78 an hour. And the New York State minimum wage hourly rate for our location is $14.20. And while I understand that New York State wage law does not apply to public agencies, we still feel it's very important that we support our monitor techs or our monitor exam monitors and pay at least the minimum New York State for recruiting purposes and retention purposes. We currently have 6 exam monitors and 6 chief exam monitors, which includes 4 of my staff members. The human resource, we also anticipate that there's going to be at least 3 resignations in the very near future. And we are also required to have 1 chief monitor and 1 exam monitor at every single exam and for every 50 examinees and for every single room. So for every room that's going, for every 50, you have to have an exam monitor and a chief of lead staff. So I'm recommending that we change the hourly exam monitors to reflect New York State minimum wage for 2023 and for 24, which is for the remainder of this year, you're talking about $70. That's estimated, of course.
Mr. Denisha, you had a question.
Yeah, just observation on the next to the last, be resolved. Should, I think there's a typo in there, current rate for this update in your.
Okay, anything else? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Moving on to a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with ALSA for the eligibility of Medicare disability benefits. Moved by Forsythe, seconded by Mr. Perkins.
So our benefits advisor was tasked with keeping us updated with trends, and we're bringing us cost-saving recommendations for our health insurance. Recommends the county contract with a company called ALSA. ALSA will provide services that include identifying pre-65-year-old retirees or dependents that are disabled and Medicare eligible and converting their health insurance coverage to Medicare as their primary coverage. ALSA will identify qualified plan participants who are entitled to Medicare as primary coverage. They'll monitor disabled plan participants who will become entitled to Medicare in the future. They will enroll disabled plan participants in Medicare Part B without penalty under federal disability special enrollment period provisions. They will represent disabled plan participants for Social Security disability benefit, which results in additional benefits for the retiree, including Medicare eligibility and increased Social Security retirement benefits. And they will resolve Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services demand notices requiring reimbursement for charges allegedly paid by Medicare as primary care in error. By converting Medicare to primary coverage, St. Lawrence County can reduce future group cost expenditures for that member by approximately 71%. And also will charge a one-time fee of $3,000 per Medicare eligible conversion. So that when they convert one person over to Medicare, they would charge us $3,000. If they don't convert them, we don't get charged. Also has a 97% success rate for getting Social Security and Medicare benefits for eligible. So if anybody knows anything about this process, it is very difficult for a person to get Social Security disability. The process is very difficult to navigate. So they help navigate the entire process. So these services will help eligible St. Lawrence County retirees as well as St. Lawrence County in cost expenditures.
Mr. Smithers.
Yeah. Do you have an idea of how many people this is going to involve?
I don't, I think there was like, I think they said there was about 50 out there that are in this range, this 365 retired range. About 50 retirees.
So it could cost us like 150,000.
Could cost us.
Yeah.
You're saying?
Yes.
Well, I guess if all 50 of them were converted, but it's not likely that they're all disabled. So likely our costs aren't going to be that high. But it's just hard to say. So there's this pre-65 retirees. So those people that retire at 55, you know, there's a lot of your police, your social sheriffs. If they become disabled between 55 and 65, when they're eligible for Medicare, when they're normally eligible for Medicare, that's the period, and those are the people that this group is looking for. Okay, those are the people they will identify, and they will see if they have disabilities, where they may have been trying to get Medicare disability and Social Security disability, but they might not have been able to get it, or they didn't even realize that they should be on it. So this organization has an actual access to a database that will give them information about, I don't know how much information, but information about whether they've been trying to get disability benefits or what. I don't know if I answered your question. I'm not thinking I did. Yeah.
Just trying to imagine the cost. And so
Anticipating
possibility.
cost is $3,000 just to convert the person. You got to think of the medical costs that it might be costing us to provide the plan benefits to somebody who has a disability. So a disability obviously is going to cost more than somebody without a disability, right? So these people probably have higher costs in our plan than somebody who doesn't have a disability to begin with. So you're talking $3,000 versus well, hundreds of thousands of dollars possibly that this person could be costing our plan. So when we convert them over to Medicare primary, we no longer will be responsible for those costs. Medicare will be. It's hard to give you an exact.
Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So then next up, the treasurer is going to give us the 2022 unaudited results. It says, and they pull on here. Everybody found their paperwork on their desk? Yeah. The first page is the cover page. So if you move to the second page, it's one equity comparisons for 2017, 2022. This sheet just includes general fund, county road, road machinery, and liability and casualty. The second document includes all funds. It's these funds and also solid waste and the workers' compensation. It's got a comparison of fund balances with 17. Do a little bit of discussion on where we ended for 2022. The big number, of course, is general fund. Our fund balance increased overall in general fund by $11,029,337 in 2020. Reserve balance, what's that?
What was that again?
$11,029,300. Reserve balances are similar to the prior year. And the encumbrances from 2021 to 2022 have decreased from the 2021 balance. That number represents purchase orders placed in the fiscal year that are not yet filled as of December 31st. So in this case, it was ordered in 2022, but not received by December 31st of 2022. That's it, the encumbrance number. Unreserved unappropriated, unreserved unappropriated fund balance increased by $11 million. There's a number of factors at play there. 17 departments underspent their revised budgets, while 6 of them actually overspent their revised budgets. We'll go into more detail on that in the department performance reports in a few minutes. But I can say that personnel, equipment, and contractual expenditures combined were under budget by approximately $11.9 million. And revenues exceeded budget by approximately $1 million. So benefits were also under budget, a little over $5 million. This is all general ones. I'll move on to the other bonds. County road increased their overall fund balance by $406,122. They're all just direct results of their operations. Road machinery increased their fund balance to $513,322. We're glad to see that. I don't know if everyone remembers, but the prior year, we funded projects, those outpost projects, 2 of them out of their fund balance, and they were very low, at a very low balance for 2022. So this is a marked improvement for them. The liability and casualty fund saw a slight increase in fund balance, $44,857. And solid waste is currently showing a decrease in their fund balance. It's as a result of operations of starting the recycling station project in Ogdensburg. They actually appropriated about $1.6 million last year, and they're only about 300,000 of it is actually. So they had a good year otherwise to only be showing a $300,000 ish decrease in their earnings, retained earnings. And the self-insurance fund or real discount saw a decrease in their fund balance, exactly matching the department budget report. They also appropriated some of the reserves, some of their fund balance. Resolutions 348 and 442 modified the self-insurance budget for increased costs due to scheduled loss of use award. So that's what I have for fund balance. I don't know if anyone has any questions on those directly right now. We have more to go, but I'll stop here to wait for questions. I'll note that our external audit just started this week, or actually last week. They're here this week. They did it remotely last week. They started. So these numbers are final. OPEB and pension entries are we usually post in Fund 5, which is solid waste, and Fund 7, which is the workers' comp fund. Those haven't hit these books yet. They will for those issued financial. So if there's no questions on that section. We'll move to the balance sheet.
Well, the packet, document 3 is the general fund balance sheet, and if this is for 2022 alone, this is kind of just for information. It shows on the left all the assets, and on the right liability and fund equity, as well as the fund balances. So this is just for 2022, Bill. I'd like you to look, if you wouldn't mind, look into document 4 and 5. One is assets, and the other is liabilities and fund equity. On the asset side of things, I usually just kind of pick some highlights here to show you differences between year to year. A big number that you will notice is right at the very top, the difference between the total cash. 2021, we had a subtotal of over 49 million. This year it is 17 million. That's cash, CDs, and the 230 account, which is special reserves account, are all down this year. And that's because if you go further down this sheet to investments in securities, almost all the way to the bottom. In the 22 column, you'll see $50 million, $50,222. We've been able to move away from money markets, which was the best place last year to make interest, and this year we're investing heavily in treasuries and in New York class. We held 50 million investments in either treasuries or class at the end of December. I looked yesterday at the class rate as of yesterday, it's paying on a daily basis 5.08%. So it's things aren't always great, but the interest has been great this year. So, and speaking of that, as a side note, 2022 overall interest earning for 22 was up almost $810,000 from 2021. That's a 2022 total was $944,379. That's been our best year since we really started this. Working very hard, I guess, because it's a lot of work to juggle this. So to date, this year though, last year was 944,000. This year already we've booked 750,000 in interest. So rates just actually are still climbing. So it's, not leaps and bounds, but it's been pretty consistent. The next number on the balance sheet that I would draw attention to, but if there's any, you have questions on it, you can ask. There was a big, kind of a large change from 21 to 22 for state and federal social services. That's at 20.85%. So that's the money that's owed from New York State for when we file our claims. This could be due to a combination of factors. So again, this is a snapshot in time. It's wherever the accounts stand on December 31st. The next day you could get a big payment from the state and it drops at $3 million. There's no real telling about timing, but I would also say that I believe it's a little bit high because that chief fiscal position has been vacant for a year and a half. That some of the main duties, not some of them, I would say, is that's a revenue management job and doing the reconciliations for the very complicated types of reimbursements that go on there. So social services will book off everything as if they get $100, $1 for every dollar, but we have a lot of caps over there, and that's I don't think those have been done because there hasn't been anybody there. Question.
When you say money from the state, is this money that they have given us or that we're expecting to get from them? Because sometimes they take years or years to pay what we're expecting them to pay us.
No, it is what we are expecting them to pay us. And typically though, they're on a 3-month cycle. It's pretty much like clockwork. Every month we get reimbursement for the RF2A and the RF2 claims. And they've been consistent. It was a little bit slower during COVID, but that has picked back up again. So, no, I just think that we booked as if we're going to get things, and we haven't went through and applied the caps on some of those funding streams. And when we fill this position, I expect that we will see some adjustments, but they will actually hit the 2023 books because of timing. And I speak from experience, because I worked there, not all of you know that, but Deb also worked there. So we both held those jobs, that job before. So, I didn't have anything else highlighted on this sheet on page 3. But I have more discussion on the liability and on the equity side, which is the document number 5. At the top, it says general fund balance sheet comparison continue. Okay, it's highlighted. A 690, 230% increase. It's a substantial increase, but it's in the scheme of things, it's $500,000. I mean, it's not, that isn't huge, but the reason for the jump in this account is that that's the fund that we use to place the funds. And I did not write it down, but this is where we are putting the opioid funds. I didn't write it in my notes here. That's where, so we've been receiving the funds for the opioid reimbursements or lawsuit settlements, I guess, but there, until we know how we're going to spend them, they sit in a balance sheet account. So that, and when we're ready, we'll either budget for them to move them out of there or come in with budget. So I think last year we received $650,000 in 2022 in opioid settlements. So those are sitting in the account right now. The next account had a large increase, although it's small dollars again, is the one right after that. This is the due to other funds account. So these numbers change. They're based upon what's going from one internal fund to another as of December 31st. So when we pay bills, everything is paid out of general fund checking, which is, so we pay it, but we may be paying highway bills. Highway, if we run 3 check runs in January to close out prior year expenses, they're coming out of general funds. So all the other funds owe us money, and this is the account for it. And once the transfer is done, this goes away, but it's not done until January. Again, this is a snapshot. As of December, other funds owe the general fund $760,000. That's typically to cover their bills. But this year was a little bit different. I mentioned earlier that the highway fund balances were very low at the startup and through 2022. They managed to add county road and road machinery. Oh, she's putting it to do some other funds. From other funds. Okay, I'm sorry. Never mind. Yeah, but we were talking about both sides of the coin earlier when we reviewed this, but these are due from other funds. I did not explain on the other page, and we won't get into that at this point. If there's a question.
There's one when I apologize. Funds owe general, and there's another one when general owes other funds. So it goes both ways at the end of the year. And they're cleared out very soon after.
We have to do them in order to do our bank reconciliations. So anytime that money moves from one fund to another, we have to record a due to, due from if we've covered the bills for another fund. So that's all that these are. Further down the page under other liabilities, A688, it's just about in the middle. There was a 91% increase, 91.10% increase. This is where we record the ARPA funds. So it went from 10,463,658 in 2021 up to 19 at the end of the year at 19,995,800 because we received the second tranche of the ARPA funds in the middle of last year. So this is where we record them. This is less than what we're receiving from ARPA. And it's less because we have started to spend it. So as we spend it, we take it out of here and report it as current.
We only laugh because that's a very big word.
That's the only time you will ever use it. It was on 8691. Different revenues had a large increase year to year, 85.22%. Resolution 280-2022 accepted over $1 million from the Howard G. Buffett Foundation. This is for the sheriff's. that money was put here because it was paid up front. And this is, a lot of these accounts, when we receive money that isn't, we don't have an expense in the current year against, it ends up in a balance sheet account until you're ready to spend it. This is where we've recorded that over $1 million for them. Is it HGBW,
HGBF.
HGBF, that's the acronym that we're using for that. So that was, at the end of the year, it was over $936,000, I think we had left still last year. 996. And another big number that was in this deferred revenue is the state aid for community services. So the state advances community services, their state aid money, and as they spend it, they make claims against it, they carve this money down. They had a huge increase year to year though. 2021, their deferred revenue was $2,335,000. They ended 22 with deferred revenue of $3,778,000 there. So basically, it's up 1.4 million from the previous year. And I'll say it again, we deposit their advance payments from the state, and community services will reconcile their spending and what they're out of this balance. So that's why we put it there. And there's a final note at the very bottom. There's a section for special reserves. It's not a big increase year to year, the 1.44% for the 3 reserves here. But I'd like to point that out because the difference between the 2021 and the 2022 is interest that we've earned that's actually staying in the reserves. So, okay. It stays. But increases the reserves just by investment. And that will be the next section.
Okay, so the next page is the 2022 Department Budget Performance Summary Report. So I'm going to talk about the net results altogether, and then we'll briefly look at performance by department. And we look at performance compared to the 2022 modified budget, which includes changes that were done throughout the year. If budget modifications, purchases, changes. So we compare to the 22 modified budget. We also compare to the prior year's total expenses or revenues to get an evaluation of how things are going. So overall, I think you've heard, some of these numbers already from Renee. The overall cost, the net county cost, is lower than the modified budget by over 22 million. So this was accomplished by appropriations being down over 18 million. So that's money that was budgeted that was not spent in the current year, and I'll talk a little about that later. Revenue was over the modified budget by about 4 million. 23 out of the 28 cost centers, and I'll talk about cost centers and not the number of departments. Some departments have multiple funds and they're tracked individually. So that's why I'm referring to cost centers, and it doesn't quite match up with departments. 23 out of 28 of the cost centers had a net cost, bottom line cost that was less than their modified budget. The very few that had a cost more than their modified budget was due primarily to a decrease in revenue, and a couple had increases in salary and fringe, which is most likely existing people being coded and moved between different areas. So social services, you'll notice, is down towards the end of the bottom third of the page, 5.5 million less than budgeted. This may also be adjustments to come in 2023, but even at that level, it's about 2% more than it was for the 2021 actual year. So there's that may change. I'm going to flip over to the next page, which is the details. The top chart, it says funds combined. These are all of the funds except capital projects, the Fund 70 WIOA One-Stop Care Center, and a special program fund, NIPA. So this includes the general fund, capital project, or county road machinery, all of the major funds. So I'll go through these in areas. The salary and fringe, which are the 100s and 800s on the top chart. Overall spending was less than the budgeted amount in most of the cost centers. Most, if not all, had less than they actually budgeted. What I've added this year to this presentation, we talk a lot of numbers. I've tried to add, why would this happen? And basically salary and fringe, it's vacancies, it's turnover, it's not being able to find people, so we spend less than we anticipated. The fringe in this area is also less. Overall fringe costs at 37,225,009 for 2022 actuals is 3.7 million less than it was for 2021. The primary driving factors of that reduction were the retirement cost was about $1 million less, and healthcare costs were $3 million less. So it's been a long time since health or retirement has gone down from the previous year. So we were pretty pleased to see that. And how does this happen? It's claiming, it's changing of benefit providers, it's doing contracts, as HR brought you tonight, and increasing cost sharing as the contracts change. The costs may stay the same, but the sharing of costs from the staff come into this area as well. So the 200 lines, and just to note, we call 100 200s, those are the chart of account number areas that go along with these areas of expense. So the 200s are equipment purchases. Overall purchases, it says there was a remaining unspent balance of $2.3 million. I said earlier that some of these areas show lower spending as if it wasn't spent. There's an accounting procedure where open purchase orders, something's ordered in this year, it's not received and paid for until the following year. They're encumbrances and they roll forward. When that purchase order rolls forward, the expense and the budget is added to the next year, but it's not subtracted from this year. So it shows 2.3 million in equipment, but in these 200 lines, there's actually $1 million in those purchase orders that have been added to 2023. And it sounds odd that it does that because now it's in both years. But in a very simple way, if it subtracted it from this report and they added it to 2023 and then went, oh, we didn't spend 900,000, we only spent 800,000. And then they put it back here, this would change like every week and drive us crazy. So it looks funny, but that's how it works. So when you see something underspent, that their actual is less than their modified budget, it doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't spend it. Encumbrances for this year were about 2.4 million overall. All funds together, about 1 million overall were the 200 accounts. There's also some large expenses in other areas, like the 400 software and some other expenditures, so that they can be pretty large. So that's the encumbered, that's the equipment, 200s. The 400s for the contractual, you'll see looks to be underspent by almost 11 million. This is where the other 1.5 million for purchase orders rolls forward. Every cost center underspent their contractual accounts. So that certainly leads to the performance for the year. There's also projects, and I highlight as an example, that they get funding, get approval for a new bridge project or a new road project. That entire project is added to the current year budget, appropriations, revenue to a balance. But highway projects like those don't roll forward. They're budgeted each year in the budget process for what they expect to complete that year. So they may have added a $3 million project when they know they might be able to accomplish 500,000 if they start it. So that's why some of these numbers, it seems like we're leaving a lot undone. But it's how it's reported and if it rolls forward to the next year automatically. And the revenues, overall revenues were just slightly less than the amount budgeted. And about half of the cost centers had more revenue than budgeted. About half had less revenue than budgeted. So things that can change the revenues thought of as reimbursement. If your spending goes down, your revenue goes down. That's not always the case. Other things of how this can happen. Investment earnings, we do like that topic. It's a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of juggling. And my view of interest earnings compared to 2021 is it's 7 times what we earned in 2021. It makes me feel better at the time. Also, sales tax increasing is not a direct link to any appropriations that we do. There's other timing differences. If we get an adjustment for an expense for a prior year, that's handled a certain way. It doesn't change your expenses for this year. If we get an adjustment for a prior year revenue, I like this side of the state comes in and says, we're going to give you extra money for 2021. That's recorded as current year revenue, even though it's for a prior year, because we didn't know about it. If we did know about it, we would have recorded it and recorded a receivable. So the surprises for revenue impact current revenue. So that's sometimes why you say, well, the spending is way down. Why is revenue up in a department? These are some of the things that can happen and why it can go that way. And lastly, just to compare the overall performance to the modified budget and to last year, the appropriations were down compared to the modified budget. Like I said, the 18 million from 2021, it's actually 9.6 million more than what was spent in the prior year. That's why we do the 2 different comparisons. Revenue was slightly less than the modified budget, but it was also up 2.5 million from the 2021. So there were growth in both areas. So I know you've had a lot of numbers thrown at you, but if you have any questions on the performance area.
Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you both. You really have to consume this. This takes a little time to consume, but I'm looking at half of it, just salary, fringe, opioid, and the investment portfolio, right? That's over half of this, you know.
Sales tax.
And sales tax, that's right. Yeah. Now, several years ago, we had a 30, 60, and 90-day hiring freeze, and that's where we could accredit $1 million to $2 million in salary. But now it's just happening on its own, because we are filling almost all our positions as soon as we can.
We're trying to.
So, interesting. Me, that's really important. Thank you.
There's 2 more. Any more questions on anything? There were 2 more. The April was a breakdown of the miscellaneous reserves for 2017 through 2022. Changes for 2022, you may recall. There were bottom 2 were new reserves established later and funded for 300. Our vehicle reserve funded for $200,000. And in 2022, we made an entry finally to the public transportation reserve, 14,000. And 16. Up with that as the net. Moving the recreational trail fund, and that the net results are reported there. In 2021, at the end of the year, with 48,465. And it appears, I have not confirmed this, but we must have done a resolution we did for a piece of equipment. So 2022 landed with 13,000.
Important to note that doesn't go to the general fund, it stays.
It's in its own bucket. The last document is just the collection rates for 2022, 92.38%. Can't take credit for that as much as I'd like to, but that's where we landed. This is the first year that we did not have to back out. You'll see through 16 through 21, we used to back out the levy for county taxes within the city because they did the collection on that, so we would back them out of that piece. For 2022, we set our own bills out, so it's included in the tax levy line for 88,500,000.48. So
Collection rate.
just for our share of the Pittsburgh. We might be, I'd like to say I can't find out. I think they're unpaid, I do have their unpaid amount. 2022. Their taxes, delinquent taxes, for 138. So that's just the guy. It doesn't have any combined, there's no liability yet related to the cities.
Anyone have any questions for these two nice ladies? Seeing none, thank you very much, ladies, for the obvious work that's done into this, so we appreciate all your time. 11 million action. Next up, we have vacancy review.
This month, the group met as in keeping with our cadence of meeting the day after the board meeting each month. There were 15 requests received this month, with 9 representing 9 departments. You'll see 4 tonight, 1 at services, and 4 remaining departments will present finance. We continue to be pretty consistent when we look at our vacancy rate at about 7.5%. That is pretty consistent. Sometimes we hover close at 8%, but we're really stuck in that 7 range. Really would like to get that down with the board's approval and authorization. We are often held hostage to civil service, and also people electing not to take positions that they may not be affirmed to until either result or an exam, just as a reminder. Our trend continues. I like to keep you apprised of the trend each month. We average between 150 and 165 positions that come through for approval each year. We're trending right now at 160.8 if all things keep until August. Our immediate fill rate currently is 95.5, so 96%. Our each position, 30, 60, and 90-day hold are all equal at 1, which is a 0.75% each. And then the held withdrawn is at 2.2%. Any questions? Mr. Reagan.
I just want to thank you for adding the job qualifications.
Absolutely, and that is quick work by Human Resources. So we adjusted our process, might take a couple months to make sure we get them all, but they adapted and did well. So first up tonight, we've got
Well, the first position is a deputy sheriff position. The current deputy is going to the State Police Academy in about 2 or 3 weeks. Obviously, we try to keep our overtime down as much as possible and have that deputy available for calls for potential dangers. Very paramount.
questions for the sheriff on the deputy. Next is the create and bill.
So this position kind of goes back quite a ways. Our records officer goes back in the eighties, seventies, eighties created, way back. Pete Dalton was sheriff. That individual is finally retiring, and finally she deserves to retire, under 30-some years. And it's time to change that position from records officer to administrative assistant. We checked with both unions, to abolish records officers in Council 82, which they agreed to release. And we've also talked with the FDA to create that position, and the admin assistant has also been recognized and approved through their union. Many things that the assistant administrator can do for the Carson Division, relieve our admin office from clerical duties, give them more times for areas of operations such as development, implementation of evaluation of policy procedures, more time to monitor the staff and their performance to ensure adherence to the standards set by policies, maintain a safe and secure productive environment. The person will also set up many things, correspondence, vacancies, screen callers and visitors, obviously incoming mail, schedule arrangements, meetings, conferences, and appointments, do all of our grant writing and assist with our FOIL and MAP program, payroll. We have 4 banking accounts that that person would handle in our facility. Do all the munis supply entries and any digital updates. We're trying to digitally update many of our records for many years, and they'd be tasked to also do this. So many things that need to be done as an administrative assistant would help us in this correctional facility.
Questions for the chair? Okay, thank you, Chair. One more. Yes, sir. Yeah, go ahead.
So I have a full-time correctional officer that is leaving also for the police academy. And with our minimum mandated staffing of 62, we need this position filled to the main.
Would you guys speak into the other ones in the academy, how those positions should out, we talked about that vacancy. All positions are taken care of. Additional.
Right, so we came here, a few minutes ago about our staffing issues. Right now, we have 6 or 8 in our correctional academy right now at Canton College. They'll be done at the end of the month and have their graduation, so you'll see a bump up in overtime for our jail, obviously, because it's less staff, but we are getting to full staff. We're waiting before, so done a good job of hiring both part-time and full-time members. Obviously, these vacancies, we still have to backfill some of these positions but that's not a thing we have to deal with.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Thanks again. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have James McGahan, our public defender, here with the position for prosecution.
Good evening, everyone. I have an assistant public defender position open in my office. It's a 100% grant reimbursed position. Criminal. This position, the person left to eventually took a job in Franklin County, left prior, even though it was prior to accepting the job.
Questions, Mr. McGahan? Okay. Next up, emergency services. And
All right, the position I got in front of you is one of 6 empty full-time positions we have over there. Thanks to Jenny, she did send the eligible list that just came today. So we can start filling them. This retirement or resignation, he moved south to warmer weather to be closer to his mother and help take care of her, his wife. So I did request immediate fill so we can help with the burnout. One thing with the positions that we fill, it takes about 6 months to get a dispatcher training program in Monroe. So with the 6 positions, we're getting ready to fill out this list if we get that many candidates.
we're not even using in 6 months.
Questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Last department to be considered this evening is human resources with 2 requests.
So, we have had a resignation in our HR position, which, we are going to promote somebody, our HR aide up to HR tech position, provisionally when we can. So what I'm asking for tonight is to replace, backfill our HR aide position that will become available when we make it. This position is essential for, processing exam monitoring, 46 processing, applications processing, certification, list troubleshooting. They take care of approximately 70 outside agencies and 24 departments in St. Lawrence County. And they also do duties such as orientation, filing, copying data, entry, reception, answering phones. Just to give you an idea of how many applications we processed, there were 816 electronic applications that we processed starting in January of 2023 when we started our electronic. And then over 200 paper applications this year. If these duties and responsibilities are not completed, the inability to provide accurate and timely services will compromise our integrity of human resources and civil. So I am requesting that I be able to backfill for human resources aid position. And I'm also requesting that I can fill the HR tech position that was just recently vacated. The HR techs, they provide such services as exam monitoring, announcement, ordering, and scoring, 426 processing, application review, certification lists, troubleshooting for approximately 30 outside agencies and 12 departments. And split the agencies and departments up between techs. This position would also do help with benefit administration, ACA reporting, orientation, contract interpretations. Again, if we didn't have this position,
Questions for Johnny? So the 800 electronic applications, 200 paper applications, that's for all of these 72 agencies you work, right? Not just St. Louis.
Right.
Yeah, right. I want to clarify that. We've been right or anything? Yeah.
It's not a question, John, it's just a statement, it's just, Harry, you were on the vacancy committee with me, Rick said, and you know, there's just a shortage of employees, it's hard to fill these positions, I mean, you really can't argue with this, you know. There was no way to argue with any one position on this vacancy. So, they're not coming through with adding and adding and adding, they're just trying to keep up with the status quo, so it's, and you see it in our 22 report, so.
Thanks, Jen.
Oncoming, the county administrators. A couple updates. I think we covered most of the MAP program budget side, but I want to thank the sheriff for the presentation. I think it's important for the board to understand the impact of this mandated program. We have started to appropriate some of those opioid settlement funds, and more are coming. I think that's an important conversation to have with the Community Services Board, because some of the restricted funds are required to have new initiatives that are pushed out into the community. And I think that in many situations, those funds should be utilized for that, should help offset additional costs of this mandated program. And we'll begin those conversations as we look at budget this year. So as the balance worked out, I mentioned $246,000 for opioid settlement funds, 175 out of 2 revenue out of community services. That leaves the 100,000 that we added to the levy this year. So that was the total package of our first year of this. And we have appropriated the rest of those funds from contingency. Our hope is, as you saw the monthly totals, that we'll be able to maintain with the funds we've already transferred. Those were intended to get us through the end of the year. So we'll continue to keep you apprised. But I think that was a valuable information shared with the board.
I want to make sure or take any objections you may have. I continue to share with you the totals associated with the folks enrolled in that program. Just want to make sure I'll continue doing that unless there's no need for that any longer, let me know. But I think that's useful information as well as the opioid treatment program. Tomorrow, the Emergency Operations Center training will occur here in this room. That is the start of us having staff properly trained for emergency situations. And while we've had a changeover in the staff that will be attending, it's incumbent upon the county to be prepared. We certainly don't know or plan for the incidents as they occur, but what we can control is how prepared we are. So that we're looking to start tomorrow and then follow that up with some training, identify areas of specialty, and hopefully out of that have some senior staff that are interested in those areas and increase their level of training. So that in a situation like we faced on Christmas Eve, we have better representation and in the situation where that went on for 18, 24, 36 hours, that we have backups for those same roles. But that's the goal of what we're aspiring to. Also, the board indicated an interest in restoring both the Ag Tour and the Highway Tour, where we're going to work on planning for those this week. If you have any questions or want to make sure we take a look at one specific area, please send that information along. Going to be meeting with the planning office on the Ag Tour and then work with Don Chambers to plan the highway at a peak part of the season so that you can see some of the results of the work they're working on this year. I attended a webinar just to circle back on the ClearGov that you endorsed and supported for our budget documents that are public facing this last week. And St. Lawrence County was used as a model in a number of areas, including how to, which our assistant administrator, Dylan Soper, eloquently put together a how-to, because this is a new area and a new function that county government is sharing. Walking through how you navigate that rather than just throwing it out there is really important, and the county was praised for that. Our executive summary and our breakdown of funds. So we look to continue to increase the tool that this is and to get that information both internal facing, because lots of folks are interested from a staff perspective, as well as that public facing document, and make it more user friendly so that you can toggle through the numbers and really hone in on any specialty area that you're interested in. As I just wanted to mention, as the session closes out at the state level, both houses, both the Senate and the Assembly, approved the family court request that traveled through as an omni bill with 19 other judge requests. And our hope is that we'll see an approval by the governor of that bill. And in that situation, we will be talking with family court, Office of Courts Administration about what happens next as a facilities conversation, and we'll make sure Buildings and Grounds Committee is in at the ground floor on that, so we can bring recommendations back. It is looking like the request of the committee was honored, probably more coincidentally than I think, but it'll be for a 25 seating of a new judge. And in the meantime, my belief is that they'll continue with the quilting, if you will, of all the different judges who are assisting our current family court in getting those cases heard. And today, the county clerk's division of the DMV here in Canton made a donation to wrap up the 2023 Donate Life campaign. This is an annual support way back to the days of Mary Lou Rupp. This year, Sandy Sandmore added a bottle drive and presented a check to our Donate Life representative in the amount of $320. So every bit helps, and quite an accomplishment for their first year. So a little bit of good news. And that's it, unless there's questions.
Seeing none, thank you. Agricultural and Farmland Protection Board, Ocean Commission. Thank you. Alternatives to Incarceration Board, Ms. Burke.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Board of Trustees for Supreme Court Library, Legislator Haggard.
I do have something to report. We have not had a meeting, but we have a meeting planned on June 21st, 2023. So next operations committee, I'll be able to give you the report.
Thank you very much, Legislator Haggard. And the Emergency Medical Services Advisory Board met May, whatever that third Tuesday was. Kind of surprisingly, one of the vice presidents from Canton Potsdam Hospital attended our meeting to discuss finding a way to put together a consortium to help the different ambulance companies buy supplies. Maybe they could share EMRs, something to offset some of the costs of operations. I think that obviously it was something that we had talked about at one time. And we may talk about again later, just simply because there was concern about one hospital chain being in charge of the different things that control costs and EMR and other things for the county. It makes sense. Anybody have any questions about that? Yes, Mr. Lightfoot.
What information did they hope to obtain from that? And as I see it, this ought to be between the hospitals if they're looking to have a group of ambulances or however, whatever you want to call it, to provide the emergency services. I don't see how the county could respond to that helpfully in any other way but financially.
So there was one point in time that we had discussed kind of having something from the county. I think that we'll talk more about it later.
Okay.
So, and we meet again, not in June, but in July. Environmental Council, Ms. Minelli.
Thank you. Our last meeting was on May 17th. Our presentation was from Bill Dashnaw, the president of the Black Lake Chamber. And he shared with us some history and progress that's being made on the water quality and some future development. Shared with us a copy of the guidebook that's printed every 2 years that is for tourists and homeowners around Black Lake. Talked about the conclusions of the study that were done on Black Lake, pretty much pointing out that it's too late to prevent a spread of milfoil at this point. It really is just controlling it. However, it is not too late to prevent the water chestnut spread. And so they've talked about some of the things that they've been working on from PRISM and just people, just volunteers in general that come and pull some water chestnuts. There's an education component to that, but they do encourage people to pull, and if you're not comfortable pulling, to contact the Black Lake Association and they will come and do those pulling. And then they shared with us their work plan for 2023, which is some harvesting that they're going to do. They've got 2 of the cutters, the processors that will come in and they'll be cutting in certain areas, pretty much straight down the middle of the channel from Edwardsville to Oswegatchie, just to allow tourists that are in the vacationers, they get stuck, they're not familiar with the water and where the milfoil is. So they're going to cut that main area, working with the hydro dams to keep the water levels a little bit more regulated in that area. So it lessens chance for growth of milfoil if possible. They're building some water testing platforms so that they can have water quality samplings that they can share, so they can try to track where some of the pollutants are coming that are causing the milfoil and see if they can kind of eradicate some of those issues. And then the information center. And then the only other thing really that we talked about other than Black Lake discussion was a subcommittee forming to review bylaws. And there was mention about several years ago, donations, monetary donations were collected from people, including the Board of Legislators, and it provided some tree plantings around our campus. And then some of those trees eventually ended up being cut down by buildings and grounds. And we were just wondering if there was a possibility if there was an interest in replanting some trees around the grounds. And that was pretty much it. We meet again on July 19th. And actually, I think that's our picnic.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Miller? Seeing none, Fire Advisory Board, Mr. Denisha.
Madam Chair, since my last report, the Fire Advisory Board has not met. It's going to be actually this Thursday, 15th at 6 p.m.
However, I do want to know everyone received an invitation to celebrate the San Luis County Firefighter of the Year Award, who's Adrian Bush at the station number 1 in Norfolk. It's actually going to be this Saturday evening. So if anyone, has not planned to go, I would encourage you to go. And I know everyone got I believe everyone got an email. If you can make it, it'd be great. Adrian spent a lot of time in the fire service, a lot of dedication to St. Lawrence County. So it would be certainly appropriate to have a number of folks there.
Jury board, Mr. Sheridan.
Madam Chair, the jury board has not met recently.
Thank you, sir. The planning board, Mr. Fay.
Yeah, planning board met Thursday, meeting lasted about 2.5 hours, and I'd like to point out that a lot of volunteer citizens were on that committee, spent time doing their homework before they show up to the meeting. So, our planning board director talked about a few things. I just want to emphasize a couple things. One of them is a little bit off the meeting, but I could point out that the one issue that came up is really the dog sanctuary, the dog kennels on Route 68. This is going to be, we had 5 citizens talk about it. It was sent back to the town planning board for further evaluations, incomplete application, but there's a lot of questions I think that have to be answered in that direction. What's taking place out there at the present time? And basically there's been a couple or noise have already been issued and they're not guilty to it. It'll carry out. But the thing I would like to point out that wasn't really an awful lot part of the meeting, but I'd like to point out that this is today's issue of Bloomberg, what came out last week for us. But it was pointing out, basically talking about the development and building of long distance transmission lines. Okay, the planning board has spent hours dealing with basically our solar panel setups in St. Lawrence County. Hours, and it points out just a couple things to let you know that what I feel about it, and it's in addition to what we talked about at the planning meeting. It's just a developer building a long distance transmission line must get permission from an alphabet soup of federal, state, tribal, and basically private landowners. Then the Department of Energy performed an environmental assessment, which could take up to 4 or 5 years. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission approval process takes up about 2 more years. They pointed out a 500 long transmission line between New Mexico and Las Vegas took 17 years, I believe, to complete. And basically, I want to point out that what I see in this year, and basically we didn't bring it up to the meeting yet, but I'm going to bring it up next month's meeting, is basically we've already got the transmission lines. What are we giving up for these transmission lines? Our prime farmland and our tillable farmland. And I don't see any end to it because these companies are getting everything from basically tax credits. They're coming in from all over the country and not even sometimes the United States to basically put up these solar panel setups along the way. So I just think that we all as legislators should be conscious. When I sit through these meetings with the planning board, first of all, we find out if they're over, 25 megawatts. Jason, correct me if I say something wrong, right? The state controls. We sit there and listen for 2 hours and make a few suggestions to the township they're going to be in, which basically carries very little weight as I see it. And then if they're a small one, you go back to home rule and you've got a small farmer who's trying to retire. And, you know, I work for the state agency and I've got a substantial retirement. Farmer's retirement is on basically what he can get out of his farmland. Basically what's taking place there is basically these solar companies are giving them basically rental or buying the property, some sorts of revenue off that property or direct sell or so on. And basically when that's taking place, home rule takes place, which means the town or village which they're in can determine it. And most of your towns and villages always are going to give approval for it. As a county legislator representing you on the planning board, almost every one of those projects I voted no on, especially if they're on prime farmland. Basically, in most cases, it means nothing. Even though we as a board have decided that we do not want solar panels all over our prime farmland. Where's our prime farmland? Right along these stateful lines, because that's where the open fields are. And so you've seen right now, if you go out the door here, you head back towards Madrid, if you head towards Governor, you're gonna see new lines being established, all the poles being put up. Now, I don't know how many rights they've got to keep expanding the width of these lines. But I think we all should be conscious of it, that where is all this power going? Populated areas and the manufacturing areas. And basically, we have been told, or if I maybe have not pointed out at this group, if we can't store the solar or the wind power, we're gonna open up our lots and let the water out. Not the lots, I should say, our dams, let the water out. So we don't basically use our hydropower, which I consider should be our most valuable asset up there. We're going to now, why are we doing that? Because we really haven't got a means yet to store our wind or our solar power. So we're going to use it. I'm gonna assume it's at a higher cost than hydro. That's, I may not be all right on those comments. But this is my feeling that I've got from the committee meetings and this article. It's in today's Bloomberg. Basically, it says the same thing I just said, to a certain extent. I altered it in the way I thought it was better.
Thank you, Mr. Fay. Any questions for Mr. Fay? Yes.
Not a question for Mr. Gabe. I just need to correct myself. I'm a month ahead of myself. Apparently, I've already moved into July. Our next EMC meeting is June 21st, and then July 19th is the picnic. Sorry.
Gotcha. You were just getting ready to pick. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Fay? Seeing none, is there any old business to come before this board? Mr. Lightfoot?
I'm just wondering, and I've had a couple of inquiries, where we stand with the Wi-Fi, the high-speed internet for underserved or unserved areas. Could we just get a thumbnail of where we are with that?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Madam Chair, my hand was up.
Mr. Lightfoot is speaking and then I'll call on.
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear him talking. I'm sorry about that.
You want to give a thing too. Who wants to go first? Sure. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just wanted to just comment to Mr. Lightfoot. Yeah, I want to have a report for that during my meeting at the end of the month in the finance one for all of our the Wi-Fi and everything that we have, the initiatives that we have going on. So, but yeah, but thanks for bringing that back up though.
Sure. So there are 15 contracts have been led to 2 internet service providers, 14 to Slick Network Solutions, 1 to Adirondack Techs, and those will be addressing. Just trying to remember the number of passes that go along with that. And
That's all right.
I can get that.
The contracts are signed.
Okay.
Contracts are signed, and we're still waiting to get the contracts back from Slick. We do have the contract back from Adirondack Techs. Then the work will begin after that.
Okay, so is there any date certain have been set for them to start that work and to finish that work?
Yes, the most of the completion dates are September 2024 for the Adirondack, or excuse me, for the
September?
September 2024. And I think that That's for select 14, or the select 1 with Adirondack, Texas. Earlier than that,
Is there a map out that shows where they will be working, where they will be starting?
yeah, I don't think we have that yet, but we can look back in the contracts and see where they, I think they're intending to get most of them done pretty much around the same time, but I don't know exactly the start dates.
Okay. So is there an area that they're going, I know there's areas that they'll be concentrating their efforts in, but what about these far-fetched places that don't have much of a population and a lot of space between houses? What about those?
There's the committee, broadband committee is still meeting regular basis and discussing those sorts of things. I know that an application was submitted on June 2nd for funding through the Northern Border Regional Commission that will address additional areas in the county, and also the intent to look at other services other than fiber, to look at some possibly fixed wireless services that would be broadcasting from towers to get to really hard to reach areas. Because it just doesn't make sense to run fiber that, one.
Understood.
Two homes. In really rural areas.
So that's a problem that's been realized,
Yeah,
and we're looking at other opportunities.
correct.
And I think they can bring you a full update after that committee meets, I think, at finance. They'll give you a status on that.
Well, that's fine, but these people don't want to wait till finance they call me and they ask me about it, and a lot of the questions I can't answer. One other question, if I may, Madam Chair. What's the value of those contracts? Those 16 contracts? Or 15?
Yeah, I think
Approximately.
the allocation was sold 2.963 million, I think.
That's ARP money too, right?
That's correct. Yeah, just under 3 million.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, Mr. Forsythe.
Yeah, as long as Jason's right there. And I've talked to John about this a few different times too. My son, his tenant, out our way, hooked onto Starlink by satellite. I almost think you ought to buy a couple of them, take them around all these remote areas. I think you'll be amazed that it may not be quite, and John and I talked about it, may not be quite ready yet, but maybe by 2024, it sounds like it's going to be ready. Cost per unit is about $500. Cost per month is about $120 subscription, but it's by far faster than Slick or any of the others. So it's out there, but it may not quite be ready, but close.
Mr. Evans.
We have somebody that's formulating a resolution objecting to prohibition on fossil fuel heating for new home construction.
Yes, again.
And I know Glenn mentioned that before. We've got something that we're doing, but I think that certainly that's something that we should support, is objecting to the budget that contains that prohibition.
Any other older new business? Ray.
This is just an observation. I don't know if any of you had the opportunity, I know Larry did, to go to Waddington when the American Antique Motorcycle Association came there. They brought people from across the East Coast. I had people at my establishment from Alabama and Washington, the Washington DC area, and I'm sure other hotels and camping areas and all sorts of other places got saw benefits of that, as well as restaurants and stores. These were great people, and I know the executive director of the Antique Motorcycle Association stayed at my inn, and he told me that the St. Lawrence County Chamber of Commerce folks were, and the folks in Waddington were a joy to work with, and how receptive and welcoming the people of St. Lawrence County were to the organization. He said that's not always the case. And, when you went down there, you saw a large number of folks that came from all over to, enjoy what we have. And this past weekend, St. Lawrence County was flooded with orange tractors.
What's wrong?
Who would have thought that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of orange tractor owners would drive to St. Lawrence County for several days. The Alice Chalmers tractor owners are very serious about their tractors. And I had several gentlemen came from Ohio, transported 7 tractors from Ohio to Madrid to show them off for the weekend. And they ate at our restaurants, they shopped in our stores, they had a wonderful time. I went out there and with my grandchildren, and my grandchildren had a terrific time sitting on their tractors, and they didn't know how to start them, which is good. But then we went and watched a tractor pull and a horse pull, and there were several hundred people in the equine building out at the St. Lawrence Power and Equipment Museum who were watching these horse pulls. And the county chamber and the St. Lawrence Power and Equipment Museum people deserve so much credit. I mean, the St. Lawrence Power and Equipment Museum group is a group of volunteers who have built a small village out in a field in Madrid with their own hands over the past decade, and have just done an amazing job. And it is a major tourist destination and attraction. The events that they're holding are bringing visitors here. They're bringing sales tax here. They're bringing bed tax here. They're bringing new business to our county. And I just, wanted to make the point, because a lot of people think tourism doesn't mean a thing. These events, they don't mean a thing. Well, they do. And a lot, once the colleges leave, the Canton Potsdam area has no one to stay at their hotels and their bed and breakfast and their Airbnbs. And, if you look at Airbnb, you'll find a ton of small, Airbnbs that have opened over the past 10 years. And people are bringing in revenue that allows them to pay their taxes and have better lives for themselves and their families, and make investments in their home and community. We're seeing more and more small lodging places being built for these tourists that are coming, and it's increasing the wealth of a lot of people who invest in tourism-related businesses here in St. Lawrence County. So it doesn't all have to be big hotels. You know, I know a lot of small business people who have built small cabins, you know, some of them out in the woods, and folks are staying with them. And it's, I just think it's important to note, and I thought I'd take a minute and point it out.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Reagan? Yes, Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's just one quick statement, build it and they will come. Right?
Yeah, right. Mr. Hall, you have new business?
I just, initially, first of all, I want to echo Mr. Reagan's commendation of the folks who put on the event, especially at the Car Museum. My 3-year-old son is already obsessed with tractors, and this the sea of orange tractors just amplifies. It's been tractors in the mind since that. But Madam Chair, if you permit, I do have a new business item. So this board has been asked recently to by community members to take a look at Senate Bill 3158, the Child Abuse Reporting Expansion Act, or CARE Act. I think a good place to start with that would be to ask our county attorney to give us his assessment of that legislation. So, Madam Chair, if you permit, I'd like to ask Mr. Button to address the board on that.
Good evening, everyone. You all are aware that I can be rather long. That was a rather open-ended question, so I will try to keep my comments
5,000.
under 5,000 words. The CAR Act, the CARE Act, is an act that's been brought forward before the New York State Legislature 3 times in the last 4 years. So the purpose is to designate members of clergy as first reporters, mandated reporters. The stated purpose, as it would seem, would be to require that individuals that work within church settings who are aware of some reported abuse or an allegation of abuse be required to report it, much like the caseworker would. If you drill down into the bill, though, it's a little more complicated than that, especially if you understand the workings of a church setting, specifically Protestant settings and evangelical church settings. While I think the bill's purpose is fairly laudable, which is to at least stated purpose, prevent the potential that child abuse, sex abuse of minors could occur within a church setting. The draft and the foundation, fundamental nature of the bill really goes to attack certain aspects of truths that I think our society has held for centuries. In fact, it was a recognized truth long before our country became a country, and that is known as the penitent priest exception. The penitent priest exception is largely premised on the notion that even upon your deathbed, even upon your last moments, you may go to a priest, confess your sins, and be absolved of said sins. The notion rises from the third individual rising on the cross and passing away at the time that Jesus did on Golgotha. This notion that you can relay at the last moment your sin and be forgiven. Buried inside the bill is language, especially concerning for Protestant Christians, The bill would make it such that anyone that works within a church setting in the administrative requirement be designated as one of those mandated reporters. This would naturally encounter in a Protestant setting, deacon, encapsulate secretarial staff, would encapsulate all members who may be on the body of said church. So both the breadth of this design for Protestant Christians, as well as the impact to a fundamental truth of the ability to confess within a church setting, poses some very significant difficulties for churches, despite the fact that it has at least its stated goal of very lawful purpose. I think that's the explanation that I can provide.
Mr. Reagan.
For those religions that have the sacrament of confession, how would this affect their priests who have a person come to the confessional and confess their sins? It's my understanding that under the vow of secrecy that they agree to when they become priests, that they will go to jail before violating the sanctity of the confessional.
This bill would arguably make that unlawful. They would have to violate that tenet of confidentiality and disclose those materials under the same rubric of evaluation that a caseworker or a teacher would have to. If they became aware of information that appeared to be actionable or had a reasonable basis for reporting to law enforcement, they would be under a responsibility to disclose that material. I think the difficulty becomes that, and having gone through mandated reporter training myself, there are many circumstances where you would rather err on the side of caution and disclose than miss something that you should not. Under a priest circumstance, that could result significantly in limiting the penitent priest exception or that confidentiality of thought.
And under the First Amendment, that guarantees freedom of religion, wouldn't this violate, one of our most fundamental rights as Americans to practice our religion without government interference?
I cannot definitively say yay or nay, but I would definitely believe that this would be subject to challenge. I definitely believe that individual under the right circumstances could demonstrate that it would have both a harmful and interfering effect on the practice and performance of religion within a religious setting. So I could see significant challenges to it. Obviously, I'll leave it up to the court to decide whether or not it does.
I mean, one of the most, fundamental rights of Americans has always been our right as Americans to practice our religions without the government judging and siding with, saying, well, you can't practice your religion this way or that. It just seems to raise certain very troubling questions and objections in my mind.
Thank you. Legislator Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to get down to the nitty gritty on this. We're talking about children being sexually abused. We had a heinous case in this county involving an organization who protected an offender. I think if we had our district attorney in here, he'd have a different take on this situation where the perpetrators were allegedly protected and they didn't have access to victims. I'm a mandated reporter. There are other mandated reporters in this room. I understand the argument. I'm a Catholic, okay? When you go to confession, it's secret. But when we get down to what we're talking about children being sexually abused. I have a problem with this.
Mr. Burke,
I guess I'm wondering why, is there a consideration of sending a message down to Albany that we are opposed to this, or is this just, I mean, are we just chatting about that?
we have not gotten that far in our discussion.
Well,
I don't know if
I
Mr. Hall,
guess,
Is there a motion on the floor?
is there?
As a point of order, then I think this discussion's out of order.
what discussion?
Whatever it is we're discussing, if there's no motion on the floor.
Are we done with Mr. Button?
Huh?
Are we done with Mr. Button? Thank you, Mr. Button. If there is no further new or old business, do we have a need for executive session?
We do for litigation, negotiations and personnel, which is to discuss the medical, financial credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, matters relating to the appointment, employment, motion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. And I would ask that Sheriff Bigworth be allowed to stay from executive session, and Matt Denton been requested to stay by the chairman.
May I have a motion from Mr. Forsyth, second from Mr. Hall, all in favor of going into executive session? Is there any other business to come before this board?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, second by Mr. Fay.